The book is called My Affair with Art House Cinema. Essays and reviews from over the years. I mean, I added that last bit. Um, and it is right here from Columbia University Press. Is that
Yes.
okay? Um, so let's kind of start it like in a prologue in a way, like going back when you were growing up. Where did you grew up in New York City?
I grew up in Brooklyn in New York City, yeah. Uh, and then I went to Columbia, so basically all New York. Um,
Yeah.
and my parents used to send me to the movies and my siblings to the movies to get us out of the house on Saturday. Uh,
Well,
and we
yeah, I know.
saw
I read that part. Why? What do you suppose that was for? You allude to something. I just have no idea what it could possibly be. They had, they wanted
Hanky
some.
panky, what can I say? Um,
That's good.
but they had two movies, eight cartoons, coming attractions, newsreels. Uh, so that was all of Saturday, and I don't remember ever wanting to shorten it. I ate up every moment of it. So I was a movie buff by the time I was 8 years old.
Wow. When you and I assume maybe you had a kind of a renaissance of exploring that or discovering is a better word
Yeah.
that there's a whole world of cinema out there at some
Yes.
point. And that kind of what meant going from adolescence to adulthood as a film lover, as a cineast,
Right.
right? Did that happen during your Columbia years or?
It was a little bit before when I was in high school, like a junior and senior. Um, I started getting interested in movies, usually the history of movies, uh, as well as art movies.
Hmm.
And it was partly a way to explore the city. Like I'd go into uh, these places that were showing films, like um, sometimes they were churches, sometimes they were coffee houses,
Huh.
um, or connections to universities, and that would be my way of exploring the city by going to movies. Um, and that's how I stumbled upon Columbia University, um, and saw a lot of films there. I went to Lexington Y, and also I
The
started
the
dating at
92nd Street Y.
92nd Street Y. Yes,
Mhm.
I started dating at that point, so I would take my dates to Ingmar Bergman movies to impress them or something like that.
Yeah. That could be a good litmus test for, a young
Yes,
woman.
yes,
If
exactly. Yeah,
she balked at it, then maybe she wasn't the right candidate, uh, or
exactly.
or for the
I
more
was a yeah,
expanded version of a relationship, let's put it that way.
right. No, I was a big jazz fan also, so
Yeah.
I would take them to hear John Coltrane, or I'd take them to Russian silent films, and quite unfair way of testing, but these were the things I wanted to see, and so hoping that they would come along.
Hmm. Before, as you were, I guess, in your later teens, you began
Yeah.
to appreciate more art house, or yeah, is that fair to say?
Yes, I I started appreciating movies that would make me think,
Yeah.
um, and that has persisted like even now. It's hard for me to go to a movie where I don't think it's going to challenge me in any way.
Yes.
Um,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. So I know that this is something that I have a long uh, argument or dispute with my daughter because she'll see anything, especially popular new movies, But if I feel like there's not going to be anything for me to wrap my mind around, um, uh, for me it's a waste of time. But if I'm going with taking her, then it's not a total waste of time because, like, we recently saw Challengers, a movie that I thought was really mediocre, and which she really loved. Um, so she's looking at it through other eyes, you know?
Did you happen to take her to? I have your daughter's probably some. I'm guessing older than my son is. I don't. I'm not sure how
Yeah,
young.
probably.
I'm not sure how young you were when you started having children. My son just turned 20, so he was. I live now up in the Hudson Valley,
Yeah.
and after having lived in New York City for many decades, and but my son was visiting last week, and we decided to go see a new movie, which is kind of was also similar to how you're describing it,
Yeah.
relatively, you know, not non-typical experience. So, so we went to see Civil War, and you
Oh, yeah.
know, I
I
think
liked
we
it
actually,
actually.
yeah, I think it provoked, right? It did what it's supposed to do, made you think.
Civil
Oh, I
War
lost
was
your sound. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
surprisingly formally interesting. So for me, you know, re regardless of what its politics were, and all the reviews and all the articles were basically an attempt to ascertain its political position. I thought that its formal elements, where the camera was, and Kristen Dunst's performance was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so I liked it more than I expected. And sometimes it really does come down to where where the camera is put, how long the shot is going to last, how they go from one shot to another. And in that respect, Civil Wars was surprisingly good.
Mm. So yeah, I agree with that. And especially as the Kirsten Dunst really always sort of delivers, it seems, What a face. Uh, and so yes, but you avoid the empty calories, is your point.
You know, there are two parts of this. One is the movies that I go to, and the other is myself as a reviewer or a critic, you know.
Hmm.
And um, in terms of the assignments that I got, I was never asked to review a Marvel Comics movie, you know. I was
Hmm.
always asked to review art house movies. You know, they knew what I was good at and they knew what my background was. And so what's the point of sending me to a movie that I'm just going to kind of yawn through, an action movie that is not engaging me because the characters really aren't that interesting? I'm not saying that I'm not agreeing necessarily with Martin Scorsese's position that these are not really movies, you
Hmm.
know. They are movies, and of course, occasionally you'll get a film like the recent Mad Max film uh, that is being touted as a work of art. But it's just and I'll go see the recent Mad Max movie, you know. Um, but it's not what I'm going to write about. I'm going to write about something that is part of that whole tradition of what you might call contemplative cinema.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. When did you struggle at first to try to find a language to how you wanted to talk about films? Like, I really appreciated like some of the chapter, or I shouldn't call them chapters, essays that are in the book again called My Affair with Art House Cinema, and uh one chapter early on that really related to is the Dardennes, because the Dardenne brothers, because they've always been like one of my favorites. I mean,
Right.
I'm not a critic. I used to write reviews years, and I just figured this isn't very satisfying for me, and I wouldn't even choose to read my own reviews. There's so much better, so many better writers. Like I don't know, Philip Lopate, for instance. Like I so I stopped doing that. And but boy, did I enjoy going to the New York Film Festival or whatever, and seeing the latest Dardenne film. Uh, and I'm reading this, and you're bringing me right back into what I love most about those Rosette and several of the other
Yes.
films of theirs from like 20 years
The
ago, 10
sun
years ago.
and yeah,
The
exactly.
Sun,
Yeah, they're great.
like just unbelievable stuff. It's like um, just
They
you what?
invented a language for their films, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
but you had
and
to create a language too.
yeah. Well, you know, let me say that film criticism is 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 a hard job. It's complicated because um you know, first of all, you're reviewing something that usually is a minimum of an hour and a half, and you have to think about the direction, the acting, um, the um, the the career trajectory of both the director and the actors, the script. Um, we could even get into the lighting, the art direction. So, how do you get all that into one review,
Yeah.
Uh, and you have to kind of build an argument or build a tension. So in a way, it's very much like any kind of essay, which is, an essay is really a story. It's a story of your thoughts. Um, and so you've got to build in those tensions, and you've got to somehow uh, be very quick and economical about some of this stuff, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
Sometimes you're allowed a little bit more space, you know? Um, like when I was reviewing scenes from a marriage, I
Yeah.
had the space to talk about it. Um, and for me, that was really revelatory in a way because, you know, I'd been through one failed marriage at that point. Um, and so I had some feelings about marriage in general. And also, when I was a teenager, first falling in love with films, that was a great moment, 1959, early 60s. And I was a total Godard fan. And I thought that Ingmar Bergman was for suburban middle-aged people. Um, and I had very little respect for him. And then I completely reversed myself and decided that he was a giant as I became middle-aged myself, not suburban, but middle-aged,
Right.
and kind of saw the depths behind some of his films.
Yeah.
So, part of what happens is that you need different things at different ages of your life. Don't you agree, Adam?
Yeah.
You know,
For
and
absolutely. Yeah.
and then you change your mind about some of this stuff. And also, you know, when you're a film buff, you usually pick a few horses, like you decide to love somebody,
Hmm.
some director, let's
It
say.
is a choice. You're right.
And then
Hmm.
sometimes they fail dismally, you know. And you think, wow, I got to get off that train. And then you or off that horse. And then you see somebody else stay the course, you know.
Yeah.
Uh so for instance, I write about him in the book, Sidney Lumet. Um,
Yeah.
you know, when I first was seeing Sidney Lumet movies, I thought, yeah, he's a decent Hollywood director. Um, and then he stayed the course, made fascinating films, and I thought, wow, this guy is an artist. So
Yes.
I became a Lumetian.
Is that the term? Yeah, no, in fact, I remember that even his last film, When the Devil Knows
Yes,
You're Dead, was like, it's the limits for me. I mean, my standards are you reaching? Are you pushing
yes,
are you still hungry to say something and to explore emotional life? Are you, all these things. And if it fails, it's some as a commercial, work, what have you, whatever. Who That's okay. Unfortunately, we live in a country where, commerce is king, where,
yeah,
we put a lot of attention on the bottom line. So we miss the point sometimes, exactly what you're saying, where I try to, unless somebody really goes off the rails, I really try to stick with an artist, in this case, a filmmaker, through failures as well, through
the
the
ups and downs. Yeah.
peaks and valleys. Yeah, because, it's about a career, right?
Yeah, I thought that last film he made was terrific.
Me too.
Before the Devil Knows You're Dead,
So
with
raw,
Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ethan Hawke.
right?
And one of the things I liked about it that I've come to really like about Lumet is Lumet films New York and Long Island in a way that I think his feeling for locations is really um his own, and I relate to it a lot. Like when I watch a Lumet movie that's shot in New York, I feel like that's my New York. Whereas when I watch a Woody Allen movie he shoots in New York, I think that ain't in my New York. That's
Yeah.
somebody else's New York.
Yeah.
not that all of, that I think Woody Allen is also, you know, an important director, and usually one out of every four Woody Allen movies I really like.
Those are better odds than even mine.
Hmm.
But
Although I like the most recent one called Coupe de Chance.
hmm
Did you see it?
nope. But maybe
You're
if
a
you,
skeptic.
well, I just at a certain point I just was I felt a little bit abandoned by it. It's a rare example of somebody who personal crap aside, the as far as being a film, I've sat through quite a few, and I was just swearing to myself at a certain point, this is the last time, but
Yeah, I've had that with a
then
number
again
of
I look
directors.
at crimes and misdemeanors as like the high point, in
Right.
my well, you brought up an interesting point before about changing your mind, and this is interesting thing, which, you know, so many people, as you say, evolve as a fan, as a,
Yeah.
um, or as a writer, both of these things, and so, you know, and mature, and so, what about that? Like, I writing about how you've changed your mind and revisiting certain things. You do that a
Yeah.
bit in this, which I really think is refreshing,
Yeah.
because
By
a
the
lot of
way,
times people will
yeah,
not admit to making what they consider a mistake,
yeah, no, I mean, Pauline Kael was a classic example of that she never wanted to admit she made a mistake. She never wanted to see a movie more than once,
right?
you know? And
To avoid the risk of that happening, right?
right, and Andrew Saris, who was a friend of mine,
Hmm.
and I consider myself closer to Saris than to Kael. Um, he went back again and again and looked at movies over and over again,
Yeah,
and I don't see anything wrong with that. If you're a poetry critic, you're going to read a poem more than once.
good point. That's a great point. And yeah, why not? I mean, the pressure, I guess, is like when the movie comes out, you're often writing your first
Yeah.
version of this
Right, exactly.
response, right? And so you're either promoting the film or you're not. And if you're telling people to avoid the movie, it's kind of for some critics, I guess it's playing devil's advocate here. It's for anybody watching or listening, but like that to say, oh, I was mistaken. Well,
Right.
thanks so much now. It's like,
But in this particular book, um,
yeah,
let's be honest, almost all the pieces are positive. And by
right.
the way, I love this cover.
Me
It
too.
has a still from probably my favorite movie, Ugetsu by
Woman in the
Mizoguchi.
Dunes. No, but this is not Woman in the Dunes.
No,
What do you
this
mean?
is Ugetsu.
Oh, thank you, Ugetsu. So it's
Yeah, by
Kurosawa, right?
Mizoguchi. Yeah. And
Mizuguchi.
so I mean the you know it doesn't have a lot of pans, really. Um and W.H. Jordan said, why spend your time writing negative reviews? There's always going to be a ton of bad art. You don't have to be the policeman to make sure that it doesn't get through. Just celebrate what you really like. And so most of it is a celebration of what I really like.
Yeah, there's also an argument to be made is I came up as a, podcaster and critic before that, and that the message I got from my colleagues was like, independent films, let's take independent films. You have a few in here. You have
Yes,
Lena
of course.
Dunham, Tiny
Yeah,
Furniture. You've got some Richard Linklater in there and others.
right,
And of course, the documentary filmmakers like Alan Berliner, Ross
right.
McElwee. None of these people are working with much of a budget. Let's face it. At
Yeah, of
best, they're
course.
yeah, it's oh, and it's not like even with the success that they come into their next film with a big budget. They have to start all over again in many things, even Frederick Wiseman
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah,
So, and you know, I've already lost the train of my thought because I'm talking too much. But
independent film. Yeah.
yeah, and thank you. But my the message I would get is, listen, leave it alone. If it fails, we don't put attention to that because nobody goes into making these films with the intention of making a bad film.
No,
It's
exactly.
they go in
That's really
trying to make
true.
something honest and good, and if they fail at it, then just let them do that, and hope that the next time round they have more success.
Absolutely. I so agree. And I have also written a ton of literary criticism with book reviews. And because I have written a number of books, I know what it takes to write a book.
Right.
I'm not going to slam somebody You know, if they fail, they fail, but I'm not going to ridicule them because I know how hard it is to write a book,
Yes.
So I'm going to give them a little bit of compassion, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. We want people to succeed when they're making or writing a book we
Making a
want the
film.
beauty. Yeah, it's a little different. They're more cynical approach to the the movies that like the Marvel hero movies and other
Right.
because those are clearly just commercial products, built for cash
They're
flow.
clones in a way. They're cookie cutters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that right, exactly. They don't which, again, we could say serves a purpose of entertaining and,
Right.
and and what have you, and escapism has its place, but uh for sure. But those movies, I think it's okay to kind of criticize. Like if something's really that bad, avoid that one. I think
Yes,
it's
exactly.
but this has been a real pleasure to read this book, and I hope I kind of feel like I had a question about the selection. If maybe as a way to wind down is like how you came up with a particular selection, what went into that, and were you working with an editor on that, the choice of which? Because I'm assuming this is, just barely the surface of how much you've written about film.
Well, uh, I have written a whole lot more. I think the original manuscript was even longer. And It happened in the middle of COVID, and there I was stuck in my house, and I thought, you know, maybe it's time to put this stuff together in a collection. Um, so uh, Columbia University Press was willing to do it. I worked with an editor there, a very smart guy named Phillip Lopate, who kept telling me to cut, 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 and I sometimes agreed with him and sometimes not. So he said,
That's the
he said
whole
that, that
beautiful
he
part of
said
it,
that
isn't it?
Yeah, he said that was standard. He said, I wasn't the first writer who ignored some of his advice. Um, but the book is divided into sections. The longest section is feature films, but there's also a section on documentaries and essay films because the essay film is a genre that really fascinates me. Um, and because I'm an essayist and a film lover, so naturally I'm drawn to the essay film. And then there's a section on film critics. Um, so, wow,
It's
I
my
just saw
my co-host.
this dog is a film critic. Yeah, well, uh, anyway, so so it has a lot of different variations, and I think part of the reason I wrote about film critics is I wanted to show what a complicated business it was to be a film critic.
Mhm.
And I learned from all those film critics, really.
Do
So,
you, as a sidebar, Philip, do you know the works of Lynn Sachs?
of who?
Lynn Sachs?
Oh yeah, of course. Lynn is a friend of mine.
Oh, you are
Um,
friends. Mine too.
we're neighbors also, Lynn Sachs and her husband Mark Street.
Mark.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they're friends, old friends of mine. Yeah, I
Lynn
was
has a
actually
Lynn
I
has
was
a
actually in a Lynn Sachs film. They're showing, a retrospective, so I just wanted to make sure
exactly.
at DCTV. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, I'm familiar with all her films. Um,
I
I
was in
especially,
if you are, I don't know if you remember Tip of My Tongue, but I was in that one.
of course,
I
of
was in that
course.
one. I'm in it.
Yeah.
I collaborated with her on that one.
My
And
favorite is the one she did about her father.
mine
You know,
too. Yeah.
that's a fantastic
A
film.
man about it's about a father who or something, right? Isn't it the
Yeah. Her father was a
film
kind of
about a father who?
philanderer who started a lot of different families.
She has a
Uh,
lot of siblings out there, half siblings, and
yeah.
it's a very good point.
No, I love that film. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, this has been such a pleasure. I really been wanting, and I also want to mention that my introduction to you, which was probably about 15, I don't know how many years ago, was as I think I mentioned this in an email to you, was the your book about circumnavigating Manhattan, and what a pleasure that was. To
Waterfront. Yeah.
Waterfront. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was do another one like that. Well, this time do the entire Brooklyn, Queens, maybe.
You know, the funny thing about that, Adam, is that when I was working on that book, Waterfront, I said, well, can't I write about Brooklyn as well? Because I'm living in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And the editor said, "No, we just want Manhattan. Manhattan is the sexy thing, and so stick to Manhattan."
It's also a lot more, you know, mm, what's the word? Is you can kind of in terms of the scope, it's a
The
little bit
history,
more
maybe, yeah,
manageable. Oh, and
yeah,
there's certainly the history, but there's come on, I mean Brooklyn,
yeah.
lots of history, but it's true. So are you in? Well, let's end it because I was assuming the neighborhood you were in. If you were a neighbor of Lynn's, I think I know. I used to live there years ago myself.
Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I lived on Smith. My first apartment was on Smith Street and between President and Union.
I'm
Um,
living on Sackett Street between Hoyt and Smith.
Yeah, yes, you are very close to Lynn, in fact. Yeah, that's right. Well, this is really has been a pleasure. I'll recommend that for any film buff or, yeah, people who love art house cinema, world cinema. My Affair with Art House Cinema by Philip Lopate is the way to go. And I hope there are maybe some sequels in this case. As much as we are not fans of sequels, we'll make an exception. This,
Thank you so much. All
yeah.
right.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully we'll do this again with another work, even if it's not about film necessarily. I'd love to do it again.
too. Great
Okay.
talking to you.
Okay, same here. All right. Have a good holiday weekend.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Take care now.
You too, Phil. Bye-bye.